Hi. Right.
Yeah. You can hear me, right?
Better now?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's might be better, right? The light.
Yeah. Right. So within few minutes, I think within 4 or 5 minutes, we'll go live, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm streaming in Facebook also.
Okay.
Yeah. I think now your setup is looking better.
Yeah. Now the light is right next to me, and so I just turned it around. Right?
Yeah.
I was facing this side, so I just made it that I face this side. Yeah.
Yes.
Nice T-shirt, man. So you guys do sales mostly, right? B2B sales software, right?
Yeah. It's CRM software for
Oh, okay.
MSPs who are into
Okay.
managed service provider.
Okay. Nice.
Yes. Just a few minutes because
Yeah.
I said that we'll go live at 6.
At 6,
So
yeah.
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 Before that, I'm making sure that everything looking fine,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I got a quick shave.
Oh, that's nice, man. That's nice.
Yeah. I saw myself in the camera. I'm like, I'm not good.
Right. So sometimes it get little hot also because when you have different lights and
Yeah.
things are on,
Yeah.
so basically little awkward. But yeah, you have to do that.
Turn on your AC, right?
So here in Bangalore, we have no AC almost. So
Oh, okay. Because the weather itself is so nice.
yes.
Yeah, that's
Yes. I'm still figuring out. Actually, I'm live at Facebook also, but I'm still figuring out how Facebook will behave that because it's the first time I'm going live.
no, that will be different, right? I mean, just show you live on Facebook. I don't think it collect. Can you collect copies from them?
So from one stream it goes to multiple stream.
Yeah.
So Facebook takes basically that internal microphone and then it takes the virtual cam and then it automatically display there.
Got it.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, you're putting music.
Yeah. So right now, whatever you are saying, because in there, so I'm not sure if you can hear on the YouTube or not.
I can hear it.
Yeah, YouTube. I think
I can hear it on
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll slowly go live, right?
I won't be able to hear the music on that one. Because I can hear it.
After a few minutes, you can able to hear because I'll turn on the mic.
No, I mean, it shouldn't be so.
Yeah.
No, now it's out. Yeah.
Hey, hello and welcome. I Hello and welcome. Today I am again with another YouTube live, and this time I have a special guest. Of course, every time I bring in my live, they are very special. So this time the topic is little different. It's about B2B and B2C design. This is a very debatable topic. Sometimes we see the design which looks really great, and after that we try to analyze whether it's looking good for which industry. Is it for B2B? Is it for B2C? So today my guest is experts on that. He works with both the industries, B2B and B2C. Currently he is working with a B2B company. Previously he works with a B2C startup, and the name of the startup is Book My Show. Is very popular, and right now also he's working with a very popular startup named CleverTap. So his name is Swapnil. He is my very good friend. I'll not take much time, and I will ask Swapnil to introduce himself. So let me bring Swapnil, and let me ask him to introduce. Hey Swapnil, you are live now, and welcome to my live talk, YouTube talk or live YouTube show. Welcome once again.
Thanks for having me. Always.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yes, Swapnil, how's going?
Oh, it's good. Apart from lockdown, I think apart from that, it's great. I mean, things are really good in terms of at least opening up, at least in Mumbai, things are opening up a lot faster, and I think in a couple of months, I think we should be back to at least new normal as they say.
Yeah.
How about you?
So yeah, in Bangalore it was good, and after that suddenly we fell to another lockdown, and then now we are completely unlocked down. So we have no lockdown, and also we are just roaming around. But yeah, things are not as earlier.
Yeah.
So it's now complete change. So
At least now.
right. Yeah. Right. So as I was actually giving that introduction that we talk about B2B and B2C design, and you work with both the industry, like B2B and B2C both.
Yeah.
So if you can just introduce yourself, that what means what do you do, and how you came into this industry, and then after that if you can talk about this these two different industry design, then it will be really helpful, and it will be really useful for our audience also.
Sure. So, with respect to me, I mean, I just begin with saying that as everyone gets, I'm someone who keeps learning, and I love to learn in terms of, I think there's no word as something like an expert, but I think the expertise comes within how you can actually keep learning and always developing yourself. So, I myself look up to a lot of people in the design industry, and that's how I have actually learned so much in the sense of other people also who come and join you in your package. So that is something I'm inspired by. So I think last time I had she also. He's also doing stuff, and a lot of people in the design industry doing great stuff. I think learning from each other is what we have in the best interest of the community. But more than that, apart from that, I think I started off with a very computer science background. So I graduated with my master's in computer applications. But I always had this nick or this leader of design, right? So you could almost say that even if I was studying computer science, I was always intrigued by these UI interfaces and how people react to these UI interfaces, and how these are new UI patterns being formed on a daily design. human computer guidelines for Apple, and all of these things come into human interface guidelines, sorry, and all of these things that come into being and how they evolve. So I think even though I started with the Android development and more into Java and all of the mobile programming languages, I think it evolved more into this fact of actually uh, diving deep into design, and I started contributing a lot on forums like UX Stack Exchange, and most of that things made me who I am today. So right now, when I started with B2C, I entered the B2C thing, and it is great, man. Like in terms of B2C, you always have that rush coming in that, hey, today we have to design for this, today we have to design for that, today we have to design for this. And it's very, if you think of B2C, it's almost a very visual field where your entire audience, every audience you touch is driven by how you look and feel and the experiences you drive them through, right? But at the same time, B2B becomes a different thing because if you think of B2B in that sense or enterprise software, when you first mention it, right, people always think that it's very boring. It's very niche in that matter. Is like if I go to this startup or if I go to this company as a B2B designer, my value is lost or I won't be doing interesting stuff. And I don't think that's the case in that sense because even if you have startups that always push or always pushing the ground boundaries with design, visual design, like Paired, like for example Swiggy, but there's always this need to solve the problem. If you think of it in the bigger picture for other enterprises, which might have people who are jobs, and you might feel a need to solve the problem. Why not provide a better experience for these users? So I think that's where the initial thing lies, where in a B2C landscape, you mostly are driving the user's wants, but in a B2B landscape, you're driving what really matters to the user because that is in their day-to-day lives, right? So let's say if you were to say on the point of a restaurant management system, right? So if you are running a restaurant and you want to process delivery, all of that stuff. So for a B2C startup, they might also want to go into the B2B landscape to help restaurants maybe manage their orders and have a client-facing interface for their restaurant partners, right? So in that sense, B2B becomes very elevated, and it is almost like a need. It's not a want, it's a need that is satisfied. So I think that makes it a lot better in that sense.
So yeah, it's actually means like when you work for B2C, it's like your very glamorous life. You're showcasing a lot of things. You can play with a lot of animations. You can play with a lot of colors and all. But when it comes to B2B, it's all about data, right? People are so there are very less chances that you will actually have that glamorous life, especially when it comes to that B2B application design. So when you were there at Book My Show and then after that you joined CleverTap, so it's like a very big jump from one industry to another industry. So how that jump happened? What exactly motivates you from a glamorous life to a like kind of a boring life in terms of the designer's life? So how you move that? What exactly motivates you there?
So I think mostly in the case of that transition, I think it is more in the lines of me trying to do most of the things that you do B2C. I think I explored a lot of B2C in that sense. Like most of the problems that I was solving at that end were already explored. And I mean, most of the things that you do in a B2C thing is always rinsing and repeating stuff, right? So I think it was more of a challenge to actually move into the B2B landscape to hone my skills more and actually help brands on the forefront. Because if you think of CleverTap right now, CleverTap actually helps brands to build themselves and help engage with the customers more. So it's essentially what your B2C brands are actually focused on doing, essentially engaging more with customers and retaining them. And it becomes a goal of you as a enterprise designer to help these marketers and product managers to make that experience to the end users of their brands much better. So it's essentially even if you call it a jump, I would say it's more of a helping tool where I can actually now design for people who are actually designing for the end users. So it's almost like you're designing for an enterprise, but eventually you're designing for your end users who are actually consumers, right? So in that sense, I think the jump came because I thought my limits were not being hit. I mean, I was not feeling like I was growing much because I was keeping on solving the same problems over and over again. But in a B2B landscape, what happens is your problems are much more well defined in the terms of now you have to focus on workflows and you have to focus on a lot of other things which in a B2C might not be that important, but in a B2B it becomes very more larger in that sense because the cost of a design is so high. Because if you make a mistake, the cost of that can cost someone's job, right? If you do a
Right.
mistake.
Right.
So it is very interesting in that sense because even though the rush of that B2C thing, where every time you're churning out designs, you have to keep up to the trends, you have to always delight your customers. While that is being missed, but I think the larger goal over here is to always be solving problems and not just driving what delights the users. So there was this interesting quote, I don't know by whom, but it was more on the lines of how you how a designer grows or matures is when you you stop making things that people want and stop making things that people need and start making things that people need. So understanding the gap between what do people need and instead of making what people might want to consume is what I think drives the entire landscape of the entire jump. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so like somehow it gets very clarity that everywhere, whether it's a B2B or B2C, challenges are there, like as you mentioned.
Yeah.
Like in B2B especially, the workflow is one of the biggest thing. Even I work for completely for B2B companies, and I've seen that small mistakes can churn a lot of our existing customers because they are recurring. They are paying recurringly, means every month or month they are paying. It's not that they are just paying for one time or they are just paying something like comes there. So it's a very risky, at the same time it's very challenging also, because you get to know these customers in detail. And in fact I think the other thing which I found that it's your users are in a controlled environment, means like you have more control to understand your user, where maybe I'm not sure, maybe I'm wrong, but in B2C cases maybe this is not a very like a controlled environment where users can come from different section and like for example your Book My Show, thousands of people are using that and then they're booking it. So the control is quite different from one area to another area. So moving on next, so what is your day-to-day look like? How you basically work with different tools, different softwares? What kind of things you are using for your personal work or your professional work? If you can just talk about that.
Okay. Sure. So largely when we talk about the B2B design tools, I'll speak about my work and then I'll speak about the actual things I do when I design on my own. So largely in terms of work, I think most of my involvement lies around making wireframes. That is, let's say wireframing and whiteboarding on, let's say, InVision freehand. That's the tool I like to do some whiteboarding. Then once you move on to actual, once the scope is well defined and you have a clear direction of where you want to go and how you want to take this feature up, we move on to something called Balsamic, and Balsamic is a low fidelity tool, and it's completely dependent on how well is the scope defined. If it's not that well defined, then Balsamic step is necessary where you make low fidelity designs, and once it's very well defined, then you can move on to actually the high fidelity design that is on Sketch right now. And I think Sketch, at least for me, I think Sketch is largely professional in that way, on where they have honed the tool pretty much in the sense of actually being a native MacBook application. I have also tried Figma out, but Figma did not feel to me as largely more mature tool right now. But I think it's getting there in the sense of actually being almost close to defeating Sketch in that way. I mean, a lot of people have actually moved on to Figma. So as much as I would like to try it, at least from my personal experience, I think it was, at least from the B2B standpoint, I think Sketch was a lot more flexible in that way. So I prefer using that. Uh, but again, in that sense, some other things that I use is Principle if I'm doing animation in the user interface, and also Adobe XD if those interactions need to use auto animate in that sense. So it's mostly a combination of tools. I mean, there's no fixed tool. I think tools are only here to help you do your job, but most of the thinking lies in problem solving and how well you.
Right, right. Guys, this is completely, live. So maybe sometimes we get disconnected, sometimes we get reconnected. So please bear with me if we disconnect or reconnect, because this is how, that's the biggest challenge for any live show, and that's what I am facing every day. Yeah. So that's just a disclaimer, because in my first time when I bring Puneet, there was a lot of mismatch happened. Then slowly I make it steady. I am exploring different softwares here to make things better. Yeah. So you talk about Balsamic, which is like very professional and stable and old tool. I'm not sure how many people still use in their entire thing, but so how you collaborate with your project manager or your stakeholders when you work with Balsamic, if you can just touch base on that, because that's something nowadays collaboration is a big factor, right? You are doing something, your peers are also coming. So how you collaborate with Balsamic? InVision, of course, I understand that that's the most like getting feedback or getting things done from your users or maybe from your stakeholders. But inside Balsamic, are you working alone, or you have some other team member who are working along with you? How they work? If you can just touch base on that.
Sure. So, as I mentioned earlier, in the early phases of the project, let's say, for example, if you're building a feature, and in the early phases, we start with Envision Freehand, which is more of a whiteboarding thing. And that's where you actually, maybe get on the Zoom call with the product manager and your design head and all of the stakeholders involved, and you actually walk them through what you have made. And if they want to actually add in things in that sense, then they can actually comment or draw itself on Envision Freehand. So I think most of the feedback level stuff happens on Freehand itself. And if you want to then escalate it to more stakeholders to review and then make sense of things, then we want to actually move to Balsamic. So the reason I use mostly freehand in the sense for whiteboarding is because you currently do not have proper whiteboards to actually scribble your ideas and explore new paths, and that's why you have to use something like Envision freehand. But when you're getting into, let's say, the entire scope of things where your low fidelity designs are done and you need feedback before you can move to the high fidelity and the final approval, the final stamp from all stakeholders. That's when Balsamic is needed. So with Balsamic, we don't really collaborate on that level. I think mostly it's just sharing the Balsamic URL and then getting your stakeholders to just approve or just give comments on the screens. And apart from that, I don't think Balsamic I at least use for collaboration on that level. Again, it does not have that many collaboration tools embedded in it. I think it has callouts and comments, which suffice to be honest. Most of the collaboration, when it's needed, it's on the whiteboarding stage where we explore this idea and define the scope of the project and understand which approach to take. Balsamic comes in when you're trying to get into more of the design thinking process and trying different solutions in. And once one of those solutions are actually finalized or frozen, you actually then start to make your low fidelity wireframes to get the final approval.
Right. So I think, I used Balsamic a couple of years back, but now, of course, I moved from
Yeah,
one to another tool. So the means, the freehand of InVision is, of course, a very helpful tool for doing this whiteboarding kind of thing. So when we do whiteboard, so generally, a lot of debates happen. Like, hey, I'm thinking like this, I'm thinking like this. So PM has a different opinion, designer has a different opinion. So do you face any kind of like a biggest challenge where your PM is completely disagree with what you are thinking, and then you have to convince them. You have to make them convince that, oh, hey, this is the right approach to go. How you convince that? Because that's one of the biggest challenge when you work with a mature product, when you work with a mature PM, then this happens, right? And you being also an experienced designer, how you handle that? Because a lot of time I've seen that the young, the very fresh designers, when they come, they have huge number of ego that, hey, somebody talk about this, and then I will take it personally. So have you faced this kind of problem? How you deal with that?
I think it mostly comes as you mature as a designer. I think you start to realize that most of the things that you know are. I mean, I think this was a quote. I'm not sure who said it, but it's more on the lines. I think I also quoted this in the live session I had with Rohan the other day, and I think there is this quote on how good designers want to be proven right, and great designers want to be proven wrong. So this interesting quote which tells you on how you mature as a designer, and when you actually get to levels of a designer who actually wants to collaborate and get the best design out, you start to actually not think of your design as your own, but you start to think of your design as a hypothesis that they might work or they might not work. Uh, and I think the maturity comes in when you stop taking your designs personally and stop taking feedback personally, and rather give it to the rather focus on the problem statement and how best you can solve them. And that's why I think it's important to explore multiple solutions and then take input from the stakeholders. As you said, there's a lot of disagreement that happens between PM and designers, and I think that's across the board. And what happens over there is that if you have your data to prove that this has worked for someone else or this has been done for someone else, so it depends on which aspect you're talking about. Are you trying to reinvent the wheel, or are you trying to actually make a solution, right? So if you're trying to reinvent the wheel and if you're trying a new solution that's innovative, then you might need to actually convince them, or you might need to prove them with some user testing, or you might need to prove them with a little bit of data and research on that matter before they can actually pitch or vouch your solution. But if you're trying to, let's say, just do something that's already solved, then there are times when you can actually go beyond the first principles and just try to make sense of what is already working in the market, and should we even deviate from that fact that something is already working? Should we reinvent the wheel on that, or do we need to go through it by the first principles? And I think that's very important on how. So at least at CleverTap, we have this core concept and core cultural value called first principles, and how we always think of first principles when you're solving the problem. But there are times when you might need to just uh, add a feature which is already very popular in the market, and there is no problem in that. People are already used to using that, and there's a fixed mental model that people have already built on. So then you do not actually need to start making something all over new. You can just try to replicate that fact that something is already working across the board for most of the landscape and the community across. So why not just build that? So I think in that sense, data comes in. Important to see what others are doing and important to highlight that fact. And otherwise, you might need to present multiple solutions and see which one hits the wall perfectly or hits the target, and go ahead from there. And
Yeah.
taking feedback personally is something that early designers might do, because they don't have a lot of they try to get involved very intricate details, But
Right.
I think one of my mentors said this thing is that a designer's best friend is a pencil and a paper. Is when you get your ideas validated at that stage where you actually have low effort but high impact on those ideas, where you just draw a quick idea and just show it to your stakeholder, and they just say it's not going to work. You don't have that much time spent to even care about that idea or get affectionate about it. So
Right, right, right.
that's when you realize that if you want to prove your ideas, just do the lowest effort possible. Once it gets validated, once it gets approved by multiple people, then you go on to things, bigger things, and get more involved. And you can work on high fidelity wireframes, you can work on your animations. But if you do all of that in the start and then you show it at the end to the stakeholder,
Right,
then
right.
if they reject you, you will take it personally, right? Because
Yes,
I
yes,
think
yes.
the fault
Agree.
lies with the designer, not the world itself, when they do that. Because the core basics of design is that design is a very subjective thing, right? And the core basics of it is that always validate your ideas first. This goes for anything. This goes for a startup as well. If you're making your own startup, right, and you haven't validated the idea with the customers, and you just go build an entire product and then go out to customers, they're like, we don't even want this, right? So in that sense, it becomes very easy to gauge if that thing is working or not. So validating your ideas first helps to eliminate that affection of your design and move forward from there.
So, coming into your pen and paper pencil thing, so are you still doing that, or you straightforward doing into jump into software? How you do that
I
nowadays?
normally Nowadays, pen and paper becomes a little difficult in the sense of if I were to do this, then I would take pen and paper and sketch an idea if it's a smaller thing. But if it's a larger, wider project, then I think I try to stick to the whiteboarding tools available online because it becomes easier to share. If I use a pen and paper, I would need to take photos of each and every sketch and then upload it on Slack or any other messenger software. But if it's a whiteboarding tool, I think I can just copy paste the link and share it.
So, I don't know whether it's a coincidence or not, but still I have a sketchbook. I don't know whether you can see
Nice.
it or not. So
I can.
my iPad is actually captured by my daughter, so I had to draw like this. So
Oh, nice.
so I do this. Even today, I was actually ideating something. So you can see every details. I'm not sure if you
Yeah.
can see it or not. So now, because
Yeah.
we have a very less chance to do all this, why like the collaboration stuff with my team members. So generally, you know, so as you mentioned
Nice.
that I do it here, take a picture,
Yeah.
quickly put it on Slack. Even for
Yeah.
so now I started doing another thing. Like I took my daughter's color pencil, and I'm not sure if you
Oh,
can see
nice.
it or not.
Yeah, I
That
can see it.
this is basically something with the color, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and I try to make them. So yeah, means as you rightly said that if you are doing it in pen and paper, then of course this opens a lot of opportunities in front of you. And
Yeah.
then in early stage, if you get the feedback, then of course you are not taking that in personally, right?
Yeah.
So one more thing you mentioned about that, looking into data. So let's say you are getting the data either from Google Analytics or from any other tool like Full Story, Pendo, Whatjar, or
Yeah.
whatever. So do you have any specific mechanism, or do you follow any specific mechanism to understand those data? How you basically consume those data when you analyze your existing user? And what is your advice on that for the designers who are primarily working with this large number of data?
So with that aspect, I mean, this is a very good point because this largely affects on how you collect data and how you understand your users from a B2C and B2B perspective, which is the topic. So I think from that matter, we have a really great user researcher on our team, and she essentially collects all of this data to actually build insights and inferences, and then we accordingly build our roadmap and feed it into the actual process. But when you talk about B2C, in a B2C environment, you are more flexible on collecting the data and actually doing your user interviews, user testing, and all that stuff because it's a B2B, B2C product, right? So you can easily go out to users and test it out. But in the B2B scenario, it becomes a little tricky because your users are actually using this tool to do their job. So, I mean, even if you can ask them for a survey, or even if you can ask them for, let's say, you know, even if you can track them a full story, it's very limited to the fact that it has to be very contextual, right? Because they're doing a particular task. You might not know what that task is. They already have something in their mind. They are going through the software. So even if you use full story and stuff, we do use that to track the data, but it becomes very complicated. So that's where your indirect user research comes in, where you have your team like customer success and sales, which drives and understands the requirements that users have and what are they asking for and what are the challenges they're facing. What do they come to the CSM to actually understand, or what do they do? So getting in touch with those teams like your CSM and sales will help you understand your audience wider and much more broader, at least in the B2B landscape. For a B2C landscape, it's more of the usual suspects, that is full story, Google Analytics, or let's say CleverTap for that matter, and other tools that help you actually to understand your users and build your data accordingly and improve the product experience as per the tool itself, right? Yeah, 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 yeah. So I think this might not be just related to SaaS, but I think it's largely related to also your B2C, right? Because even if you're a B2C designer, it becomes very important for you to collaborate with the developers and also the other people that are in the company, right? So let's say for that matter, if you are working in, let's say, e-commerce website for a B2C company, then it is necessary for you to understand different standpoints from your developers, your product managers. And I think as a designer, it's very important and crucial to be collaborative and also understand other point of views rather than just sticking to design. Because I see, at least from the landscape that I come from, a computer science landscape, people generally, as designers, like to stick in their own bubble, right? Where you are only with your designers, you're only sticking around with the same sort of people that you already meet. You don't want to hear others' perspectives. So that's where your actual thing gets involved, where how comfortable are you to go ahead and speak to other people in the company. And I think that's what makes a company, right? You are not a separate team. You are a part of the larger organization, which is helping uh, achieve broader goals together. You're not a separate team as such. So understanding different teams in your company and understanding the dynamics of how the organization works is, I think, the primary goal you should try to achieve as a designer. And even from B2B standpoint, for that matter, uh, from at least B2B, what I see is mostly we collaborate with product and requirements flow through product in either cases. But in that sense, understanding what engineering does, or understanding the tools they use, understanding the feasibility of a project, understanding if the solution you implement is feasible or how long will it take for them to implement, understanding things like these, and also understanding teams like CSM, understanding teams like sales, and what do they do, how do they contribute to the organization, is very helpful for you as a wider perspective and giving you the insight that you might want to build for in the future, right? So as you evolve in the organization, it becomes much more uh, important for you to collaborate together a lot of with a lot of teams. Rather than when you're a junior designer, you are in your own bubble. You have a manager. You only report to them. You don't even coordinate with the developers. You don't even coordinate with, let's say, product managers. So as a junior designer, you start to only become in that shell. You be in that shell. But as you evolve, most of the things that you do, your is when you actually start to understand your soft skills will be much more uh, valued than your actual tools and the actual process that you follow. So a lot of that, 80% of your job is mostly soft skills and understanding and collaborating and making communication effective, and only 20% is the actual work.
Right, right. So, so as you are working with Sketch, right? So
Yeah,
generally, I ask questions on tool. That's my
yeah, sure.
by default
Yeah.
like stamp, right? So, which one is your favorite plugin inside Sketch?
Favorite plugin inside Sketch, I think at least uh, I think the most used. I think the most used plugin is probably the Artboard Manager, which essentially has the arrow magic thing, where it just by default names your artboards. So it's not a difficult thing for me to actually go and name each one. So it by default names the artboards based on numbers or letters and numbers combinations. So I like to follow something like A0 to A10 or something like that, and accordingly it goes from ascending, that is horizontally, and then vertically down. So let's say you have 10 screens, and then it goes from A, B, C, D alphabetically and numerically.
Right.
To the
Yeah, I think there is a delay.
standpoint of which tool do I personally like most? Oh, there's a delay. Okay.
Yeah, I think there is a.
Is it better now?
Of course, it's a that's the biggest challenge when you do in live. So sometimes my internet, sometimes your internet, sometimes the world's internet getting slow, and then it's
Yeah.
it's actually challenging very. So yeah, so I was just talking to him. I'll just try to bring him back again. Yeah, I think I'm trying to bring him back. So I was talking about the favorite tool. I think we have a little cut there. We didn't able to understand properly. I'll try to reconnect with Swapnil once again, and let's see if I can reconnect with him. I'll quickly see that. By the way, I will show you guys that how my setup is looking, so then you will understand doing this live talk and in single handed is actually very difficult. At the same time it's fun because right now last almost 3-4 live talk I tried different softwares. At the same time I tried with new one where I'm bringing some fun elements, but I can see there are a lot of challenges are happening when you bring and do this experiment. So what I'll do is I'll quickly try to reconnect with Swapnil once again, and let's see how can I reconnect with him. Give me a minute. I will try to call him again, and then I'll try to bring him. Yeah. So basically we are on again. Yes, Swapnil, you are on. So I was just
Okay.
I was just talking that doing this live it's very challenging.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so yeah, you were talking about the favorite tool. If you can just
Yeah.
you know
So I think what I was saying is, for me at least, the most used one is actually the Artboard Manager, which is essentially it just gives you the idea and gist of how you can easily name the artboards effectively. So it goes from horizontally to vertically. So alphabetically it will be like A0 to A10, and then as you vertically scale down based on your workflows, it will go from alphabetically that A, B, C, D, and accordingly. So alphabet plus numerals is my favorite combination. So it becomes even easy to collaborate with developers or PMs to actually say, let's say on A10 screen I have a doubt, or on A10 screen you can find this asset. And secondly, I really like to, at least I have always been a fan of Craft by InVision. And a lot of
Yeah.
people might not know, but they have this uh, data populator tool. So if you have a JSON string or if you have a JSON object, and I think there's a separate plugin for that as a data populator as well. So if you have a JSON string or object, it can actually fetch these values from you online if you have that JSON enabled always, right? So for that matter, let's say your developer is building a JSON code, and you want to actually import that in your design, but not just your on your website or something like that. You can just enter the JSON string inside your sketch itself, and it will populate it for you automatically. And I think also on that lines, I like to use tools that measure the contrast ratio. So at least when you're thinking of establishing a design system on those lines, or at least choosing colors on those lines in the initial phases of a product, understanding if that color works or not, having something like a Stark, which is a contrast tool thing, and it uses these contrast tools and helps you to understand if you're designing right for the user, and helping people who might be challenged, and who might be facing these accessibility issues. And uh, it- because even if you're using when you're talking about a B2C product, it might be mostly people, of the age group, or largely young age group, if you're talking about mobile product, right? But when you're talking about people who are using B2B products, you don't know the age, because your age might lie between multiple years. So the elder a person is, they might have much more visibility issues, and they might be a little bit, uh, you know, especially able in that sense. So
Yeah. So
understanding how you can
yes. So that
recommend
is
that.
basically was my next question. So I think I
Okay.
should ask this question then. So how important accessibility when it comes to your B2B design? Because we have seen, especially in B2C design, mostly as you mentioned that the younger age groups are using with with
Yeah.
different devices, but for B2B, how important and how that can affect in your product also.
Yeah. So I think from that perspective, I think I mean, when we talk about accessibility, I think in a B2B standpoint, it largely is very. I mean, you can always say that you want to make your product 100% accessible, but that will never be the case, because there's always new things that can always be discovered, right? So from a B2B standpoint, accessibility can be as simple as enabling the tab thing to go from one field to the other. So tab navigation by your tab key, right? And then it can be as simple as highlighting putting the field in focus, or making sure that there are proper error cases, making sure that there's a proper feedback when you click on the mouse, when you click on a button when you're hovering, or when you are actually clicking on some UI interface. So all of these small cues actually form your accessibility over time. But I think it also matters on the contrast ratio of the colors you have in your background and in your foreground, because if that contrast is very low, elder people or senior people in that sense might have more struggle in that. So when you talk about these new interfaces across, which is trending right now, like neomorphism or all of those things, they don't really focus on these key patterns, which are how accessible are those, and no one measures that, because it's a trend and people just start to design it, but no one measures these key aspects of things like, will it be accessible to all of my users? Will all of my users be able to use that properly? Or even in that sense, what are power users doing? So I remember, so when I started out at the startup Haptic, which is now owned by Reliance Jio, and I started out as a customer service agent. So I was working part time alongside my college, and I was actually a chat assistant. So people used to chat on this app, and these customer service agents used to chat back at them. So if you think of it in that perspective, a user, like I was the user for the business, right? Because I was an independent contractor or an internal employee in that sense. And for them, it was almost like I was a B2B customer because I was using their product. So in that sense, what happens is you start to understand some patterns which I might be doing to save time for myself. So
For example, there might be messages I might be just copy pasting in my, let's say, Notes app, or there might be messages or something I might be just copy pasting on a different browser window, and I just copy paste that on the actual chat box, right? So as a customer service agent, that becomes the opportunity for the business to understand, oh, this guy is a power user. I might as well build a tool for him so that they don't have to use a separate app like Notes app to actually build that interface. So understanding and differentiating on how power users are using and making your B2B software much more efficient for these power users will also help. So something like keyboard shortcuts, right? Because if you use Sketch, there are a lot of keyboard shortcuts,
Right,
and even
right,
we don't know much about them.
right,
Even Figma, for that matter, has a lot of keyboard shortcuts.
right,
So we don't even know half of them. And the professional designers who are power users of Sketch and have been working for the longest time in that, they know all of these shortcuts and they essentially do not even touch the mouse for that matter, right? So it becomes very efficient that once you start to address these concerns and address these small offerings to the users. For example, Slack also has keyboard shortcuts where you can actually understand how to send
yeah,
a message with an image and how to easily get into the upload image window without having to drag your mouse all over the place, right?
right,
So as you go beyond a little bit, understanding how your users are reacting, understanding your user base more, you try to get to understand on which accessibility features to first pick, and understand on if this should be the case or this should not be the case. So let's say you're a B2B application and your target users and your users are in the range of 20 to 30, then you
right,
might not need to actually be completely focused on, let's say, visibility, accessibility to improve visibility. But you might want to focus on keyboard shortcuts because young people like to learn a lot of things, right? So I think it becomes a matter of priority on which to pick first and which do users actually need to help make the jobs better and faster. And there's this entire thing on this thing called jobs to be done mentality on by Intercom. I think Intercom is a very good product to look up to in terms of B2B. So there's this jobs to be done. As in, when you're using a B2B product, your main focus is to get the job done quickly, right? So how quickly can you get the user to get the job done should be your primary focus on if this accessibility feature will help them get their job done faster. I think it'll be much better for them to, move on from there.
right, right. So I remember, when I was working with a company called Jiffle now, which is a
Okay.
which is completely in a different space. They are into event meeting management software basically. So the typical user are 40 plus, means their age is 40 plus. So now when I first went there, so I try to understand that, hey, what are things we can improve? So I got a feedback from one of our CSM that, user is not able to find this button, although the link is there, but they are not clicking there. So then I understood, for a user like 40 plus age group, if something is not obvious, if something is fancy, they will never click. You have to have that obvious factor. So then we slowly change everything, like drop down should look like a drop down, button should look like a button. Then we change even there were some tabs, so we put some fancy tabs on that time, the name and then something will come. Even users were not clicking there. So we move back to normal tab, that how you see the tabs. So we found that these guys are actually using typical Windows machine, and they use Outlook, they use Microsoft Excel, Microsoft Word. So then what happened, if they found something new, they get scared. They said, I don't know what to click. I'll not click there. I'll not click here. So whether you build a fancy design, it never works actually. So even in my current in my current company, in Zomentum, our users are also little like 35 plus, 40 plus. So now I had that learning. So I learned that, and slowly, every step I'm moving with some changes. I'm, very, carefully handling them, because It is good that we will have some fancy like buttons and all, but in reality, that may create a lot of problem to those users, and that result can be a very big business loss. People may think that, hey, your software is very clunky, kind of, it's not usable, we are not able to find that. So that actually hits the business, especially in B2B. But yeah, in that case, in B2C, of course, even companies like Amazon and all, if you look at why they are not even coming back, because their user groups are very different, right? Even now, in my family, my mother can order from Amazon, or some elder person can order. So of course they will not use a software or a application which has got a fancy thing, because they will not able to understand that. So of course it depends on your user's age group, and then based on that, I think taking a decision to have whether a very fancy design or whether a very usable design which is also scalable is very important, right? So I got one question.
There was another. Yeah, sure. You can go ahead. Sorry for
No,
cutting you
please
off.
go ahead. Then I'll take. I got one question from Facebook, so
Okay, sure.
I'll ask that. But please go ahead.
Yeah, so I was thinking, so this is just a thought that I had also as well, is on having variable UI designs. For example, when you talk about, like, let's say it's more of a A/B test kind of thing, but you're having variable UI designs which differ from user to user. So if you know your user very well, you can actually, let's say, the user is, let's say, 40 plus years of age. So you know that they will have trouble looking for smaller icons. They will have trouble looking for smaller fonts and stuff like that. So I mean, these features are already there on your phone or something like that. But there's also this field to explore where you can make the UI variable based on the fact on what the user's age or the stuff they haven't been doing so far. Collecting all the data, you could probably make the button larger for them to find easier for one user. So this comes in the entire fact of this concept called mutative design, where you understand every user, you customize every experience for particular user itself. So let's say you have one user which is in 20s and one user which is in 40s, right? So a user in 20s might be able to see this very tiny button on the side, but they will still click on it. So +1 for, let's say, your ordering app, right? But on a side of 40 where they have a phone which is very large, but they can't see which one to click. So in that sense, you might make it very accessible, high contrast ratio, and larger buttons. So this is also a good field to explore, but I don't know. I think it requires a lot more resources in that sense.
Yeah.
It needs to be done by some bigger company like Facebook, Netflix, and those guys.
So this is pretty interesting what you mentioned about variable UI, and I will make a small video out of it, and I will put that in different platform to also share your thoughts about this variable UI. And this is really interesting. If you are working towards this, if you are doing something on this, please let me know, so that I will also add to that, and I will try to evangelize that, because this is something may get popular after a certain time, because we may need to this is actually required to gradually take your UI to the better place. So one question which I got from Facebook is, what is your source of inspiration? I can't put the feed because my Facebook is going in a different feed. So what is your source of inspiration?
In a sense, source of inspiration mostly lies on seeing how other products behave. I like to actually, so I don't know if you guys know, but I stay a lot active on social media, and I keep liking stuff. I keep reading more articles. So I think it's mostly the internet, and browsing much more forums, seeing how people are doing things across. Because when you're a designer, I think understanding what other people are doing in the startup world, understanding the patterns they're following, understanding what other completely different industries are doing. For example, gaming industry. So I live and sleep by my PS4 now. for quite a while now. So I play a lot of games, and even then I keep getting these ideas saying that, oh, this one did this thing different. How does this thing affect things differently? So maybe this game gave features, accessibility features much more higher importance than this other game. So I think being aware of these things happening around you and around the world are very helpful for you as a designer to evolve over time, because you keep on you are on your toes each time something happens, and you can always see that, oh, this is how YouTube solved this. This is how maybe Intercom solved this. This is how Zomato solved this. This is how
Yeah.
BookMyShow solved this. So
Yeah.
all of these things come into place, and you can actually try to then use that in your product. You can always have this mood board sort of thing. You can always go and take a screenshot whenever you find this cool little thing. You can always have that as a reference point.
Right, right. So, that is also another reason I started this, because, my entire, learning is from other people. My entire learning is from YouTube, or maybe some online tutorial or courses, and of course my, designer friends like you, Saptarshi, Puneet, whoever is there, like whoever is connected with me. So I thought that it is a golden chance for me to actually, ask a lot of questions which I have for them. So that's the reason also I bring them. I invite all of you to, first thing is to learning for myself, and I have seen that due to this, a lot of other peoples are also getting benefited. So that is my biggest motivation to start this and to doing this. And you will not believe, after this video got recorded, every day I actually watch all these shows.
Nice.
Because some places, somewhere you are giving me some kind of an learning for me. So I am actually learning from there. I'm actually learning from how you are thinking. Like today you mentioned about how you work with Balsamic, how you collaborate with freehands, how you are thinking about pen and pencil factor, how you are thinking about the variable UI. So these things are a big learning for me, right? And I'm sure whoever is watching or whoever will watch the recorded version, they will have the same kind of an input to them. They can learn that. So another question I got it, that how you learn means how you learn now, because you have already done your college, you have already done something. So how you're learning continuously?
So I think that mostly stems from the fact that I just try to keep myself updated with everything happening around in the startup world and in the design technology world, and always keeping myself updated. So I think a lot of these factors also come in with the groups you have, and I think that there's a very I think this is a very common quote that you can always hear, is that you are you are the result of the people you hang out with, right? And you are actually the subset of the people you hang out with. So it also matters on who you speak to, who you chat with regularly,
Right.
who you actually follow every day, who you actually. So there are these various communities like GDG. There's various design communities that happen. Various calls that happen. Various other people that you inspire by. Very known designers, or even businessmen for that matter, and it helps you to understand on their personalities, what they are doing, and just try to go through them, subscribe to a lot of newsletters, understand what is happening in other products, because people have this mentality that if I am let's say designing for, let's say, a B2B software that focuses on engagement, I only need to follow what people are doing in the engagement point of view, right? But that's not the case. You just don't need to follow competitors. You might also have to go beyond your scope and also see what B2C people are doing on the web. What let's say a different company is doing in a different landscape altogether, which might not even be related to your same industry. Just because just because inspiring from competitors itself does not keep you on the toes. It also helps to inspire from a larger set of the world, where different things are happening. So talking to a lot of people, understanding their perspectives, understanding their problems that they're trying to solve, and frequently networking a lot helps you gain all of that mass of information, and you keep learning in that level.
This is interesting actually. You have different areas to learn and different areas to keep learning that. And we are almost 1 hour over. So my last question is how GDC is going on. Now it's a pandemic time.
Sorry?
How your GDC program? You are very active of that.
GDG,
So how that is going on? What is your next plan with that? Because I keep following you that you are doing a lot of stuff with this, and if you can talk about that a bit.
So GD. So there are three things I'm involved with in the Google ecosystem, and that's one is the Google Developer Experts. Unfortunately, that program was graduated for designers and marketers in 2019. So those designers and marketers were actually transitioned into the entire mentorship thing of Google for Startups Accelerator. So what they do is essentially connect you with startups in the whole sustainability and ML and AI domain to actually help you grow on that front and help you solve problems for them. With respect to GDG, which is the developer group, so GDG is more of a technology developer group, which focuses on technology and all those factors. So earlier we used to have a monthly meetup every time in Mumbai itself. So I run the Mumbai chapter over here, GDG MAD, and we actually run this chapter and help hold this event in multiple startups across every month for the year. And right now we are more completely online. I mean, there's no other way to do it right now. And I think we do it on bi-weekly basis now, but largely, like, I think the in-person connection helps a lot. So moving on, I think we will be focusing on in-person connection once the lockdown lifts and things are back to normal. At least companies start to function properly. I think won't happen at least in 2021. But I think once that happens, I think people connecting face to face is much more productive and
Exactly.
get that authenticity.
Exactly.
Instead of, having
Right. Even just before lockdown, like we started our Figma design community here, and like we got a tremendous amount of responses, and people were excited. Even in Valentine's Day, also we got 70 plus participants. But due to this, we had to stop, sit back. We had to see virtual meeting is fine, but at the same time, the kind of the chemistry is there in that actual meeting or in the actual meetup is not there right now. It's more of a okay, because people are doing, maybe some people will come, maybe some people will not respond. They are into their own space. So it's not happening. So that's the reason also we all thought that, hey, let's, pause for the time being, and maybe when things will get over, but not sure whether it will get over within next 1 year or 2 years, because now people are scared. They will not come to any thing. So I think in that note, Swapnil, I think we have a lot of learning from you. We get to know. I will try to this time timestamp it, because this is very important. I have to sit for all of my videos to timestamp, and people can actually see that. And few things I will also cut from here, and I will put it that in my YouTube channel. And whoever is watching, please don't forget to subscribe. Whoever will watch later on, don't forget to subscribe. I know Swapnil doesn't have that channel, so I can't ask that, hey, go and right. So, but he's very active at LinkedIn. He's very active so I'll put all the details in the description, so you can go ahead and connect with him. And also, he's very active at Instagram. I'm not, because I'm a little older guy. My kids are now getting more active on Instagram and other stuff. Even my daughter started a new YouTube channel, so that's what she is building a lot of videos. So I have to help her to make all this uploads and on. And luckily she is using Loom to record all these videos. So I said that, okay, fine. So she found Adobe Premiere. I said that, hold on, this is quite a big software. You need to hold for some time and then you can do that, right? But till the time we are at our house, so I think I will keep doing it at least for my own learning. And I'm very fortunate that whoever is there in my friend list, if I'm asking them to come, they're saying yes. They are not saying no. So in that way, I'm really, really fortunate. In fact, I'll be also happy if somebody wanted to share and come and share their experiences. I'll be happy to, take that as my learning also, and I'll be happy to bring them in live also. Even I can bring repeat people. I can ask Swapnil to come back again, because a lot of things may be not completed here. I may ask him to come back. So in that note, Swapnil, thank you so much once again for joining, and I hope you will be safe and healthy. Like you are in Mumbai, so it's a very hot spot, right? So thank you so much for joining, and stay safe.
You too, man. See ya.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.